Verse 6 of chapter 15, now I just read the first clause of the first verse, then I read verse 4. Now I want to focus on verse 6. Verse 6 of chapter 15 reveals Avram's reaction to the word of the Lord by stating that it was at this moment, this is the chair passage, the crucial verse that we're highlighting, chapter 15, verse 6, it's at this moment that he, Avraham, believed the unbelievable, and it was credited to him as righteousness. Remember, up to this point, Abram had remained childless. And it was Abram himself was beginning to suppose that maybe the heir of his household was to be the recipient of God's promise from Genesis 12, verse 1 through 3. Remember, God promised to Abram that his seed would increase. It was what I call the promise of multiplicity. And yet, here we are, Abraham's getting old, he's approaching, he's getting near the point where he can't have children anymore, and he still doesn't have any children. So he's beginning to really, he's kind of questioning this covenant, if you could put it that way. The narrative of chapter 15 for our study trails off with statements amounting to, because God and Avram are still interacting, but it trails off with statements amounting to, verse 7 says, Adonai said to him, I am Adonai. And the Hebrew would say, Vayomer Elai v'ani Adonai. And then we also have in that same chapter, at verse 18, it says, quote, that day Adonai made a covenant with Avram. And the Hebrew reads, Bayom hahu karat Adonai et Avram Berit, end quote. So, the only reason I brought that out is because we have Adonai showing up before chapter 15. We have Adonai in the end of chapter 15, but couched in the middle, sandwiched between the bookends of Adonai, we have this word of the Lord. The phrase Davar Adonai shows up, as opposed to just Adonai. So, at that point, you, the careful student, the careful Berean, should be asking yourself, who or what was this mysterious word of the Lord that suddenly appeared in the parenthesis of the narrative with Abram? Now, I use the word suddenly there in my statement because the Hebrew does say, V'hinei davar Adonai elai lemor. V'hinei. The first word in that verse 4 of chapter 15, V'hinei. Hinei is a Hebrew word, and it's explained by Jewish authorities as really untranslatable. In fact, according to Navigating the Bible, the online commentary to Genesis 15:4, here's what they have to say about this phrase, Hineh. The word Hineh is explained by Jewish authorities as, quote, untranslatable. It is often rendered here or behold. Just like it is in our verse, it's rendered behold. But this is an approximation of an expression that has no equivalent in the Indo-European languages. For this reason, it is often left untranslated. In general, it serves to intensify a statement and to provide emphasis. Here, they go on to say, the intensity denotes that it was a sudden or intense experience, end quote. Now, isn't that interesting? That's why I say that this word of the Lord suddenly shows up. It's rather sudden for Avram to have this revelation. It's like he didn't know or had never met this word of the Lord before now, and then suddenly the word of the Lord shows up. So that's the impact of the Hebrew that I'm trying to convey to you here. So, who or what is the mysterious word of the Lord? Well, before I give you what might be considered a Christian answer, because you're probably, those of you who've read the New Testament, particularly the book of John, are already jumping ahead and knowing where I'm going to go with this. But let the sages of blessed memory, the Chazal, let me add their input to this Hebraic feature of the story first, and then we'll give a messianic answer. Here is some information that I culled from, let's see, where did I get this? From the Jewish Encyclopedia on pages 464 through 465. Here's what they have to say about the word of the Lord. Quote, in Scripture, the word of the Lord commonly denotes the speech addressed to patriarch or prophet, and they provide you with some examples in Genesis, Numbers, and 1 Samuel, and Amos. But frequently it denotes also the creative word, and they give you a quote. Quote, by the word of the Lord were the heavens made. And that comes from the book of Psalms. They ask you then to compare, quote, for he spake and it was done, end quote. Another quote is, quote, he sendeth his word and melteth them. the ice, that is, he melts. Fire and hail, snow and vapor, stormy wind, fulfilling his word, end quote. These again are lifted from the book of Psalms. They go on to say that in this sense it is said, quote, forever, O Lord, thy word is settled in heaven. And again, the quote is from Psalms. The word heard and announced by the prophet often became, in the conception of the seer, an efficacious power apart from God. Now listen up. This is the consensus of the Jewish sages down through the centuries without the axe to grind from the Christians. Listen to what they say about the word. The word often became an efficacious power apart from God, as was the angel or messenger of God. And then they give you another quote. This time it's from Isaiah. Quote, the Lord sent a word unto Jacob, and it hath lighted upon Israel. The it in that passage is the word. End quote. And then they give you another one from the book of Psalms. Quote, he sent his word and healed them. And the object of the Hebrew there is that the word heals them. The he, of course, is God, but the word is one that heals them. And then they ask you to compare this quote from the book of Psalms. Quote, his word runneth very swiftly. Notice that the word is personified as if it's a person. The word is running, end quote. Now, that's the end of the information from the Jewish Encyclopedia. Let's go back to my own commentary. If you followed along very carefully, and of course if you've done your homework and read the book of John, especially chapter 1, verses 1, then you will have realized by now that the word of the Lord is in fact the Lord, ADONAI, or Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh himself. That is really what the Jewish authorities are saying here. The word of the Lord is the Lord. This much is made clear by the objective text and the subsequent notations that we observed in Hebrew via the footnotes. But let us take it one step further to complete the mystery, all right? Because some of you aren't buying this yet, and that's okay. I when I first encountered this information, it's a little hard to swallow. But as I worked through it and veiled myself of the data, it kind of made more sense to me.